Hi, everyone. Welcome to the meeting.
Welcome all, welcome to the Learning Circle.
The International Association of Coaching. Home of the Coaching Masteries.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are. And thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Saraswati Rajendran, and everyone calls me Sarah. And I'm delighted to welcome all of you to our June Learning Circle, a space where we come together to learn, reflect, and grow through meaningful conversations that deepen our coaching practice. Before we start, I have a few things to share. Okay, firstly, to support our global community, we have interpretations available in English, Spanish, and traditional Chinese. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see a globe icon that's interpretation. Simply click on it and select your preferred channel. Okay, so because today the speakers, some of them will be speaking in Spanish, some will be speaking in Chinese. So select your preferred channel. The second important announcement I want to make is the IAC Step 1 online exam. This is for IAC members. The IAC Step 1 online exam is being updated. So to implement these changes, the Step 1 online exam will be temporarily unavailable beginning June 29 to July 20th. If you are currently working on the exam, please complete it before June 29th, as your progress will not be saved after that date. As soon as the updated Step 1 online exam is back up and running, we will send an announcement to the same address. So there was an email that was sent out yesterday by IAC. So for further questions, or if you are not too sure, please refer to that email. Okay? And another thing, if you have questions during today's presentations, please place them in the chat and we will have a combined Q&A at the end of the session. Yeah. So let's now zoom into our topic for today. Okay. Closing the gap between knowing and doing, helping clients turn insights into actions. As coaches, we've all experienced moments when our clients get powerful insights and clarity, yet they struggle to take meaningful action. Today, we'll explore why that happens and how we as coaches can support clients in moving from awareness into sustainable action. We have two wonderful speakers to share on this topic, and it's my pleasure to introduce the first speaker, CJ Ng. CJ is an IAC Mastery practitioner, a member of the IAC Board of Governors, and currently serves as the IAC's Global Membership Coordinator. He brings extensive experience coaching leaders and sales professionals in complex B2B environments across Asia. Passionate about leadership, collaboration, and human connection, CJ supports leaders and teams in unlocking their potential through outcome-based selling and shared leadership practice. He's also the co-creator of Sales Map, a situational judgment assessment for B2B sales professionals, and the author of Winning the B2B Sale in China. Today, he will share how coaching masteries can help people move beyond knowing what to do and actually taking purposeful action. Please join me in warmly welcoming CJ Ng. CJ, over to you.
大家晚上好啊！那我今天就先用中文来跟大家做介绍、做分享。刚才我们Sarah 也介绍我了，我叫 CJ，我是新加坡人。那我主要
Everyone, I'm
是
CJ. I'm from
关于
Singapore.
销售团队方面的一些工作，
I
包括销
basically,
售尤
my
其是 B to
expertise
B 方
is
面、
in
公对公
B2B
方面
selling,
的销售，不管是培训还
B2B
是
sales
教练
and
服务。
B2B
那今天呢，我
training and
们
also
重点
coaching.
在于从知道到
So
做到。
our
那
main
我
point is
就
from
拿我
knowing
平
to
时
doing.
跟销
So
售
I
人
will
员的一些
I will
交流，
share
做一个
So the most important
做
thing
一个
today, the
，what
简
I
message that I
would
want to take
share
to
with
everyone
my
is that
salespeople
we have to
as a
go
bridging.
from thought to
So I
action.
will share
So
how I
it
use
is
IAC
precisely,
Coaching
and
Mastery
thank
to
you,
help
thanks to the
salespeople
IAC's
to close the
coaching
tough
masteries,
deals.
and using these
So,
in a practical
for
manner,
example,
we're
like
going to be able
Mastery
to make
6,
progress in these
clarifying
negotiations.
to for the people who do to be
Actually,
we have to have
very
a long
frequently in
process.
complex
Sometimes it takes 6
B2B
months
business,
or
the
even 1 year.
process is
So when
relatively
we
slow.
follow up, when we
Each
try to follow
step
through,
takes its time,
sometimes
and
clients just disappear,
it
or they are like
could
hesitating,
happen
or
that
they
throughout
just do
this process,
nothing.
the client will
So
stop,
in this kind of process,
and that's
so
why the
sometimes we
negotiation
would feel
can
that we are
take
stuck.
longer.
We just couldn't move on with the
So
process.
it is
So
in
a
these
lot of
times
people,
where we have to really
some
consider
people, like
the
when
training
they are
masteries
doing
to break through
mentoring
and
or
make progress.
coaching, they would try to help the salespeople to solve the
Actually,
problem. But actually, this is not
something
what we
really
should rush to
important
do.
to do and consider
We should
is that we
know
don't
what
have
is
to
happening, what the
rush
situation is.
at
If I
negotiation
were to
and
do
try to
a
resolve it as
sell
fast as
a
possible.
coaching for
But
salespeople,
the
I
contrary,
will know
the
try
first thing we
to
have to
get a
do
better
is
understanding of
try
the
to
bigger picture.
understand what is the client's
So we would
situation,
not guess. We will
understanding what that
ask
situation
what
really
happened,
is, what
and we
is the
will ask
client
the
seeking,
salespeople,
what is the client's
and then we
necessity,
will have,
what is their pain
when you are
point.
doing sales, what exactly did you say or do, and what kind of reaction or
When
feedback
doing
the
business
clients
or
have.
being a middleman, we have to consider what the client needs and what they have at that moment.
So we don't guess, we just clarify what's happening.
我们说我们要就是保持清晰的目标我们的心碎期。那作
So
为
the
销售，
second
很
thing
多
is
时候
that
销售的
Mastery
优先
7.
是我只要拿到订单，而没有考虑到我这个
So
订单
if I
是
have
否
the
挣
deal,
钱，是否有足够的利
we
润。
need to
而如
actually
果说我们
consider
的这
whether
个
this
目
is
标的清晰
profitable.
度，作为销售，你其实
As
不是只是
salespeople,
简单的
it's
要
not,
拿到订单，
you are
你
not just
其
getting the
实还要
deal,
考虑到
you are
你这个
actually
订单是否
considering
能够
whether
为
this
公司
is
创造收益，是否值
this
还
deal
是不
will
值。
generate
那作为教练，我
significant
们有时候
profit
就
for
要
the
提醒我
company.
们的
So as
销
the
售人
coach,
说，你
we
这
need
个
to
订单
remind
如果
our
签不下去，
salespeople,
还
if
有
you
意思
try
吗？
to follow
我们
through
做销
this
售，我们
deal,
最终的这个
is
目
it
标，
worth
除
it?
了完成自己的指标之
Because
外，
as
我们最
salespeople,
终
we
的
need
目标
to
是什么？
fulfill the target.
就
We
公司
need
对
to
你的这个
first
期
know
待，领导对
what
你的
the
期待，甚至客户
expectations of
对
the
你的期
company
待，又
or
是什
from
么？
the clients.
此时
What are
此
the
刻，你是
the
应
exact
该再继续跟进这个订单呢，这个客户呢，
so whether
还
you
是
should
你有
pursue
更
keep
好的、更
pursuing
优质的机会，值
this
得你投
particular
入，值
client
得你
or there
换
are
个赛
other
道
opportunities that you should invest in more energy and time. So this is from our Mastery 7. So you need to know what's the real target, what's your aim. You need to understand what your clear goal is. So if we follow the deal and it gets stuck, because we have the clarification already, we can actually dig deeper whether the clients have some unmet needs, even clients or customers themselves are not aware of. So the first thing we need to do is to ask, so if the client already has a pretty good solution, why do they need your solution? Why do they need to choose you over the conventional solution? So we need to ask ourselves first, and we should also ask the client or customers whether they have any kind of needs we haven't discussed before. So the clients actually what they expect to achieve in the end. So how do they evaluate whether they achieve that goal or not? So as salespeople, we need to ask ourselves first, and then we will invite the clients to discover or explore more potential possibilities. And the next step, how do we do it? Sometimes we need to consider this part. Sales is only one part of the one function in the company. The sales is not done by only one department. So the higher level in the company, maybe we need more resources from technical support as well. So we need to remind the salespeople and ask the salespeople, if I were to follow through this deal, if we already know the customers, what I should do, what else should I know? What knowledge do I know? And what kind of support can I get from the company? Maybe it's within the company, or maybe I need from coworkers support, or maybe stakeholders, like engage other stakeholders. Once we have a more systematic support, we can actually carry this on. So if we do a conclusion, most salespeople, if they are experienced, they have good sales skills. They've been doing sales for a long time, many years. They probably learn a lot of sales skills from training. But the key point is, what should they do in this current situation? What's the next step? They need more clarity. They need to know their own goal. So whether they have a clear idea about their ultimate goal, and the next step, how they can seek support, whether they know how to and where to seek support. So when we do coaching, it's actually clarity, the key point, whether whether they know what kind of support. So as coaches, we need to let these salespeople know how to utilize what they already know. So in the coaching process, actually, a lot of people already know, but what they don't know is how to put what they know into doing, into action, into actually actionable steps. So this is my quick sharing. Thank you.
Sara, tienes el micrófono apagado. Sara.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you so much, CJ, for your insightful presentation and for sharing that knowing alone isn't enough. Sustainable actions requires clarity, possibilities, and structures that can support follow through. So thank you so much for that. To take us even deeper into this conversation, I would now like to invite my wonderful colleague, Marcela Bermudez, to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Elena Espinal. Marcela, over to you.
Gracias, Sara.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. My name is Marcela Bermudez. I am the leader of the Colombian chapter for the IAC. At this moment, we're also going to be joined by Elena Espinal, a very, very special woman to whom we're very grateful for having on the call today. I'm going to give you a short biography of Elena Espinal. Elena Espinal is a certified master coach with more than 30 years of experience in developing leadership, education, coaching, planning, strategic planning, and team development. She founded a master in organizational human development with a specialization in coaching in the University of Londres, Mexico. She founded the first chapter of line coaches in Argentina, and she created Coaching with Vision, an organization dedicated to generating professional opportunities for them. She has been recognized internationally for her contributions to coaching, and she has been a presenter in conferences all over the world and has been included amongst the 50 most influencing people in coaching by Marcel Goldsmith. I would like to remind everyone on the call that at the end we're going to have a Q&A. Those who speak Spanish can type your questions in the chat, and at the end we're going to see what questions she's able to answer for us. Welcome, Elena. Thank you so very much, and thank you, Marcela. It is really a pleasure to be here, and I hope that this conversation is truly helpful. I am completely willing to answer all questions, and I am going to first share my screen.
Sí, se está viendo. La estamos viendo,
yes,
gracias.
we can see the screen. Yes, thank you.
Bueno, qué alegría. Entonces,
okay, wonderful. So I would like to start with a question. Have you ever known exactly what you needed to do, and regardless of that, you didn't do it? For example, knowing you had to hold a difficult conversation with someone, or that you needed to leave a role behind that wasn't a good fit anymore, or asking for help even, or starting something, for example, dieting. But despite knowing and understanding it and being smart enough and having enough experience and even the willingness to do it, something stopped you along the way. I suspect that everyone who is in this call
Y este
has
es uno de los grandes
lived a
misterios
moment like
del cambio
this.
humano,
And this
porque
is
la
one of the
mayoría de
great
las
mysteries of
personas
human change because the
no
majority of people
fracasan
don't
porque les falta
fail
información. La
because they lack
mayoría saben,
information. The
los equipos
majority
ya
knows.
saben, los líderes
The teams
ya
know,
saben.
leaders know.
Raramente el desafío es
Very
el conocimiento.
rarely the challenge is
Creo que el
knowledge
verdadero
alone.
desafío que
I
existe
think that
es que
the real
existen
challenge out there is
estructuras
that
invisibles
there are like
que
these
operan por
invisible
debajo de nuestra
structures that
conciencia
operate underneath our
y que
consciousness
hacen que cambiar resulte muy difícil
and that
o
make it so
incluso
that changing becomes really
imposible.
difficult or even
Y
impossible.
entonces me gustaría que
So
habláramos
I would like
y
to
juntos nos
discuss
pusiéramos a mirar
together and also
cómo
together
les pueden llegar
analyze
a ser esas estructuras
uh,
invisibles.
which
Porque si el
structures
coaching solo
could this
consistiera en
be?
ayudar a
Because if
personas a
coaching consisted
entender
only
qué
in
hacer,
helping people
probablemente
understand what they have to
viviríamos
do,
muy decepcionados.
then from probably we would be very disappointed
Pero
in
si el coaching
what
ayuda a las
coaching would be.
personas a
But it
comprender
coaching helps
qué
people
les impide
understand
convertirse en
what is
aquello que ya saben
stopping
que
them
necesitan ser,
from becoming what
puede
they
ser que en
know
este
that they have to
conjunto
become. It
aparezca
might
otra
be that
cosa.
something deeper might
Muchos
come
enfoques
up as the reason.
tradicionales del
Many
desarrollo humano
traditional approaches
parten
of
de una
human
idea muy
development
simple.
come from a
Si
very
las
simple
personas
idea.
entienden,
If
actuarán.
people understand, they will act.
Parece razonable.
It sounds
Pero la
reasonable.
experiencia nos muestra otra cosa.
But experience
Las
has taught
personas
us
entienden la
otherwise.
importancia de
People
delegar,
understand that the importance of
de no vivir
delegating
controlando todo,
and in
entienden
continuing
la
to control
importancia del
everything. They
descanso
understand
y
the
se siguen
importance of
agotando,
rest and they continue to
entienden la
burn out.
importancia de las
They
conversaciones
understand the
difíciles y
importance of
siguen
difficult
evitándolas,
conversations and they
el
continue to
colaborar
avoid
y siguen
them,
compitiendo, y decir que la
collaborating,
distancia
and
entre
they
saber y
continue to
hacer
compete instead.
es
So
uno
the
de los
difference between knowing
espacios
and doing
más
is
importantes
one
del
of the
coaching.
most
Y esta
important
distancia
spaces
rara vez
in
está llena
coaching.
de
And this
ignorancia.
instance is rarely
Con
filled with
frecuencia
ignorance.
está más
Very
llena de
frequently,
miedo, no sé si
it's more filled with
consciente, pero
fear.
puede ser un
I'm
miedo
not sure
invisible, un
if
miedo al
fully
fracaso,
aware
un miedo
fear,
al
but it could be
éxito,
an
a la
invisible fear, fear
exposición,
of
a
failure,
decepcionar
fear
a
of
otros, a
success,
perder
of being
pertenencia,
exposed, of
a
hurting
convertirse en alguien
others,
desconocido para sí
of
mismo.
losing the sense of belonging, just becoming somebody
Hace
completely
unos años me acuerdo que
unknown
trabajé
to
con un ejecutivo
oneself.
que era tan
Some
exitoso y que
years ago,
sabía
I worked with a very
perfectamente todo lo que
successful business
había
owner,
leído,
and he knew
todos los libros que se imaginen,
perfectly
había
fine what he
dirigido
needed to
programas de
change. He had
desarrollo,
read all the
podía explicar
books,
la
all the
solución
self
como
growth
nadie
groups. He could
y
explain the
sin
solution
embargo
like nobody
nada
else.
cambiaba. Un
However,
día me
no,
dijo
nothing
algo
changed.
extraordinario.
And one day he said
Si
something
me convierto en el
extraordinary.
líder que digo que
If I
quiero ser,
become
ya no
the
sé
leader
qué
that I
voy a
want,
hacer.
that I say I want to be, I'm no longer going to
Y en
recognize myself.
consecuencia él
I
se
won't
dio
know
cuenta
who
que
I
el
am.
problema no era el
And then
comportamiento,
he realized that the
pasó a ser
problem
la
was not his
identidad.
behavior. The
Porque
problem
muchas
became
veces lo
the
que impide el
identity.
cambio
Because very
es la
frequently,
falta de
what stops
capacidad,
change from happening is not the lack of
es el
capacity,
costo
is
oculto
it's the hidden
de
cost
transformarse.
of transforming oneself.
Uno de los cambios más importantes que
So
experimenté
one of the
como
most
coach
important
ocurrió
changes that I experienced
cuando
as a
dejé de ver
coach
la resistencia
was when I
como un
stopped
obstáculo
seeing
y
resistance
empecé a verla como
as an obstacle
información.
and I started seeing it as information.
Imaginemos un cliente que
Let's
posterga
imagine
constantemente.
a client that constantly
La
procrastinates.
mayoría de las intervenciones se
The
enfocan en
majority of the
productividad, en
interventions
gestión
are
del tiempo, en
focused on time
priorización,
management,
en responsabilidad. Sí
prioritization,
ayuda,
responsibility.
pero ¿qué
That's helpful.
pasaría si
But
la
what would
procrastinación
happen
no fuera el
if the
problema?
procrastination was not the problem?
¿Qué pasaría si fuera una
What would
forma de
happen
protección
if it was
frente al juicio,
a
frente al fracaso,
self-protection method
frente a la decepción,
for
frente a la necesidad
failure,
de agradar,
disappointment, the
frente a
necessity
descubrir
of
que no
being
es tan
liked,
capaz como espera ser?
or discovering
Por lo
that they're not
contrario,
as capable as
protección
as they
frente a descubrir
expected,
que es
or
mucho más capaz de lo que se
self-protection
había
against
imaginado, porque el
being
éxito
much more
puede
capable
resultar
than they
tan
imagined,
disruptivo como el
because
fracaso.
success can be as disruptive
El
as
éxito
failure is.
cambia las
Success
relaciones, cambia las
changes
expectativas,
relationships,
cambia
changes
la identidad.
expectations, changes your
Y la
identity,
identidad es una de las fuerzas
and your
más
identity is one
poderosas
of the
que
strongest
organizan el
forces
comportamiento humano.
that organize human
Las
behavior.
personas pueden
Um,
tolerar
People
enormes
can
niveles
tolerate
de incomodidad.
enormous levels of discomfort,
Lo que les cuesta es convertirse en alguien que
but
todavía
what's
no
hard for
saben
them is becoming
cómo ser.
someone that they don't
Por
know
eso,
how to be that person yet. That's why that's the powerful question is why this person doesn't change, and instead what is this person trying to preserve with this pattern? And this question opens up a doorway that is completely different. We not only live in a reading of reality, which we understand it is a reading, but we live through interpretations, through stories and narratives, and very frequently these narratives are invisible. And the client can tell themselves, I have to be strong, I cannot disappoint, I am responsible of everything and everyone, I have to demonstrate my own worth, I can't make any mistakes. And these narratives become like internal operating systems that shape our perceptions, leak possibilities, release emotions, and lastly, end up becoming identity. The problem is that rarely we see the story. All we see are the consequences of it. We see an exhausted leader, an overflooded business owner, a professional that's a perfectionist, an entrepreneur that can't stop working, a team that avoids conflict. And behind each behavior, there usually is a narrative. And coaching creates the space for these narratives to become visible because everything that becomes visible at some point becomes something that you can pick, that you can select. We have these options that this is the great human gift that we always have options. And this is, and once you do this, once you identify that, you can start transforming it. Many people believe that self-awareness is an individual activity, and that reflecting, thinking, writing, all that holds its value. But there are aspects of ourselves that can only be discovered when you establish relationships with others. There are things that we can't see on our own, in the same way in which we can't see our own faces if we don't have a mirror. Coaching becomes that relationship mirror. It's not a mirror that tells them tells people who they are, but instead allows them to see what until that point had been invisible and hidden. The role of a coach is not providing answers. It's to create the conditions so that a deeper gaze becomes possible. Sometimes the most transformative moment in a coaching conversation is not the solution, is recognizing, is that magical instant in which the client stops for a moment and says, I had never seen things like this before. Because in that moment, something changes. Not because the coach had provided great wisdom, but because they created the space for the consciousness to expand. And when the consciousness expands, possibilities expand as well. The comprehension on its own does not transform. We have all had insights that didn't change a thing. The transformation requires certain emotional conditions: presence, confidence, security, compassion, allowing yourself to explore the uncertain. That's why coaching isn't just a cognitive process. It's also an emotional one. And very frequently, people need a space where they can stop acting, stop defending oneself, and just finding themselves in an honest manner. When this happens, something extraordinary becomes possible. And they can start imagining new futures, and whatever that can be imagined eventually can also become action. I would like just one last reflection. I think many clients arrive at the world of coaching thinking that they need help in order to do something. And very frequently this is true, but beneath that action, there is a deeper invitation. It's the invitation to become somebody else, somebody who is more aligned with themselves, that's braver, that's more authentic, that feels more liberated. In its best expression, coaching doesn't consist in fixing people or optimizing people's performance or not even resolving problems. It consists in being with people so that they can recognize these invisible structures that end up organizing their lives, these fears, these narratives, these identities, these assumptions. Because when these structures become visible, people recover their capacity to make choices. They reconnect with that person that they are becoming. Now, in order to finalize, I would like to say that this is the start of this conversation. This is why coaching always calls to action. But when people are able to see, it's easier for them to plan out an action that they had never thought of before until then. And nobody has to convince them, nobody has to pressure them. When they're able to see, it's easier to make choices, and that is the beginning of a transformation. People don't transform themselves when we tell them what to do. They transform themselves when they see that those things that very silently have been organizing their lives. And that perhaps is one of the deepest gifts that coaching can offer.
Muchas gracias, Elena.
Thank you, Elena.
Grandioso todo lo que nos has dicho.
Wonderful.
Me quedo
Everything
con
that
lo
you've shared has
siguiente,
been
lo que
wonderful.
dices.
And
La comprensión por sí
I'm
sola
going to
no
have this
transforma.
takeaway.
El coaching es un
Comprehension on
proceso
its own doesn't
emocional
transform.
de dejar
Coaching is
de
an
defenderse
emotional
para
process
encontrarse consigo
of
mismo,
dropping the
se vuelve
self-defense
elegido
and
y se
finding yourself
transforma. Muy
becomes an
amable,
option
Elena.
and becomes a
Entonces
transformation.
ahora
Elena, you've been so
vamos a
kind.
continuar
Thank you.
con
We're going
preguntas
to
que
now
dejen en el
continue
chat,
with any
tanto para
questions
CJ
that
como
people
para
might
ti.
have in the
Muchas
chat,
gracias. Vamos a
both
estar
for
atentas al chat.
CJ and for you. We're going to be
Gracias, Elena.
keeping an eye on the chat. Thank you, Elena.
Yeah. Thank you, Elena, for that sharing. It was really so insightful and beautiful. And the way how you mentioned that, transformation doesn't happen, just by coaching, but it's actually going deeper. And I think that's where a lot of the layers, the protective structures and the invisible stories they tell themselves. So thank you so much for sharing that. So now we are going to be opening for Q&A. If anyone has questions, please place in your in the chat. Or you could put your hands up and we can unmute you.
Para
Okay,
que
yeah.
puedan hacer sus preguntas. Gracias.
Okay, so yeah, so feel welcome to ask your questions. Go ahead.
Hola, yo tengo una pregunta.
I also have a question.
¿La puedes hacer, por favor?
Sí. ¿Qué tal?
Please go ahead.
Buenos días.
Hi, good morning,
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
everyone.
Bien, ¿y tú?
How are you? What's your question, Ricardo?
Rápidamente, bueno, mi
Yeah,
pregunta
sure. Just very
dirigida
quickly, my
a
my
todo el
my
compartir
question
porque
is
me
addressed
llamó mucho la
towards the
atención
second presenter.
esa parte
Um,
cuando el cliente, por
it
ejemplo, yo
was
que tengo un cliente
very
que
interesting.
cuesta
I
conseguir
have a
todo,
client right now that
realmente esa
it's
dejar de
difficult for him
procrastinar,
to
lo que él quiere lograr es dejar de
uh
procrastinar.
connect with. Well, basically what he wants to do is
Pero
stop procrastinating, but
haciendo el
um
descubrimiento con él, él todavía tiene como ciertas
when
barreras, digamos,
discovering things with him, I
internas,
see
¿verdad?
that he
Que no lo
still has
permiten lograr esa
internal
transformación,
barriers
ese
that
cambio.
don't allow that
¿Qué
internal transformation, that
recomendaciones
change.
podrían dar
What
cuando en este caso la persona es
recommendations
bien
would you
joven y
give
todavía no
when
tiene
the
ninguna
person
superpower
is
muy,
very
muy,
young,
muy
hasn't
concreto?
developed
Entonces
a
está en
very
ese proceso
solid
como de
sense of
descubrimiento y
self-awareness, so he's
crecimiento.
still
¿A
in the
qué
midst of
recomendación me pudieran
this
dar para
process of
poder con, en este caso,
discovering
con una persona que
himself
está joven, que
and
está
growing?
como
So
como
what advice do you
redescubriendo,
have for this
pudiera pues
example with a
permitir
young individual
que se pueda catalizar ese
that
cambio, esa
would
transformación para él?
allow to catalyze or trigger that
A ver,
transformation for him?
creo que,
Okay,
¿te
I
acuerdas de la
think,
imagen de,
do you
del
remember
iceberg?
the image of the iceberg that was on a slide?
Has descubierto una
Yes,
partecita que está
you've
debajo del agua.
discovered just a
Queda
little
más.
part that's above the water. There's
Tanto
more
quiero, pero no
underneath.
pasa.
When I
¿No?
want, but it doesn't
Ahí
happen.
yo seguiría investigando,
In that
seguiría
case, I would
haciendo
continue
preguntas.
investigating,
No,
continue
no,
asking questions.
yo no temo en seguir preguntando,
I am not
¿no?
afraid of
Muchas veces la
asking
pregunta es muy
on and
simple.
on. Sometimes
Es,
the
¿y qué
question is pretty
más?
simple. It's what
¿Y
else?
qué más?
And what
Y
else?
si él puede hablar de sus emociones,
And if he's able to speak about his
las
emotions,
emociones como los estados de ánimo,
emotions such as
yo
moods,
creo que son
I
como la puerta
think that they're
o la
like
ventana que te
the
muestran
doorway
desde
or the
dónde esa
window
persona
that
se
shows
está
from
relacionando con el
where
mundo.
that person relates to the
Recuerda
world.
siempre que la emoción
Always remember that
marca
emotion
desde qué creencia está leyendo el mundo.
outlines even what
Cuando yo
belief
tengo
the
miedo,
world reads
estoy
from that
creyendo que
person.
eso
When
que está
I'm
afuera es más grande
afraid,
que yo.
I am thinking that
Cuando
whatever
estoy
is out there
triste,
is bigger than I
estoy
am.
viendo
When
que
I'm
allá afuera no
sad,
está lo que
it's
yo quería que
because
estuviera,
I am
que no
thinking
está
that
más, que
outside
lo
we don't
perdí.
have what I wanted, or it's no longer there, or
Entonces,
I lost it.
aprender a preguntar,
So learning how
investigar la
to
emoción,
ask
no
and
a
really dive
profundizar
into
la emoción,
emotion,
no quiero
by deepening into emotion,
superficializar la respuesta o que se
I don't
entienda
want this
que
answer to
desprecio,
feel
¿no? Pero
superficial.
cuando empiezo, ¿de qué color es tu emoción?
But when
¿Qué
I start
constelación es? ¿Qué
asking,
tamaño
what
tiene? ¿Qué
color is your
forma tiene?
emotion? Where do you feel
Eso
it?
que
What
son
shape does it
expresiones y a
have?
veces después no sabemos
Well,
qué
it
hacer
might
con
be
eso.
interesting, but this is information
¿Está?
that we might not even know what to
Yo
do with.
uso muchísimo la emoción. Esto
I
es muy
I
heideggeriano.
use emotions in my work
¿Por qué
and
estamos
in
de
my day to
ánimo?
day,
Porque
and
siempre estamos
a
en un
person's
estado de
mood,
ánimo.
because a person
Siempre
is
está
always in
primero con ese
one type
estado
of
de
mood
ánimo
or other,
nuestra relación con el
and
mundo.
our relationships
Y
with what
cuando
happens
tú
out there
puedes
is
meterte
outlined by
desde ese
this.
estado de ánimo
So when you
a
can
comprender qué
dive
es lo
into
que
that
produce ese estado de
from
ánimo, que
emotion
además
and
uno ni
understand
se
what
da
that
cuenta.
emotion
¿No te
produces.
pasa esta gente que, por
Sometimes people
ejemplo,
don't even
siempre se
understand it.
levanta de mal humor y que te
For
dice,
example, we got people that
dame
always
2
get out of
horas
bed in a bad
que
mood
se me pase?
and they say, give me a couple of hours
Y terminan
and I'll
llorando,
shake it
se dan
off.
cuenta, en algún momento
And,
hasta tú
and,
mismo contestas en mal
and
tono,
at some
ya
point, you
harté
even
de esperar 2
respond
horas, porque
with
además
a
los
tone.
estados de
I am
ánimo son
tired of
contagios.
waiting
¿Está?
2 hours
Entonces, lo
because
que
these
tenemos
moods
que
are
hacer es
contagious
seguir
as well. So what you
investigando,
have to do is continue to
metiéndote,
investigate,
eh,
dive deeper,
y te voy a ser más cruel.
and I'm going to be a little
Tal
cruel
vez
here.
no tienes que investigar
But
tú.
perhaps you don't have
Yo
to do
creo que
the
nosotros a
research. You don't
veces
have
nos
to investigate
equivocamos con la
yourself. So,
responsabilidad.
sometimes we are mistaken
Nuestra
with our
función, nuestra
responsibilities.
capacidad de relación,
Our capacity of
tiene que ser
relations
crear el espacio para que el otro
is
sí
creating
te
the space
escuche.
for the other person
Porque
to
mientras siga poniendo al
listen
otro
to
el
themselves.
poder en ti,
Because when the other
en que
person puts
tú
all
eres
the
el que
power
sabe
in
y en que
yourself
tiene que darte
and
la
that you as
respuesta
the
correcta,
coach have the
porque
right
no es lo
answer
que
and
tiene que
you
ver.
know everything, they're not looking at the things
Nuestra
that they have to
posición
be
es
looking
una
at. Our
posición muy humilde y al mismo
position
tiempo
is a
muy
very
grande,
humble
que
position at
es
the same time,
ser
quite big,
espacio para que el
which
otro se
is
vea.
being a space for the
Así que
other
ahí
person
también
to
te
see
puedes hacer una
themselves.
pregunta.
So
Y
you can
es,
also ask yourself a
¿qué me
question
está
there.
faltando a mí
And it's, what am I lacking?
para hacer
Me.
espacio,
In
para que
in
aparezca
order
toda la
to
libertad?
create this space for all this liberty to arise from this person, for this person to be able to see themselves. I hope that this is a helpful answer. Thank you, Elena. CJ has his hand raised because he wants to answer. Go ahead, CJ. Thank you.
就两个方面的补充，一个方面我们用我们的精粹四
I have two things that I want to add. We use our mastery 4. When you are presencing, you are present, you can actually feel what kind of why they would have this kind of procrastination. And we also need to use the clarification, like what's the main factor that makes them feel that they cannot move forward or take a next step. What should happen? What to be happen? What should be happening that we can actually move forward or can make a next step? We can ask the client, the coachee.
Thank you.
Thank you, CJ. We have a question from Jennifer Tong. I think this is for Elena. Thank you for sharing. I resonate with the statement, transformation begins when we can finally see. How do we surface our client's protective factor that prevented him or her to
谢谢你的
finally
分
see?
享，我很有共
What
鸣
kind
的
of
是这句
questions
话。
can we
当我
ask
们
to help
终
our
于
client to
能够
realize
看见时，转
what
化就
protects
开始
him
了。
or her
我也
from
很
seeing?
好奇，作为陪伴者，我们要如何帮助我们的个案把那些保护他或他不去看见的内在因素，这个保护性因素可以浮现出来。
I think that this
怎么
is
样
a
可以让
a
个
question
案
that is
意
very
识到什么
similar
在保护
to
自己，不去看见
the
某
other
些事
one,
情。
but I have a different question different answer this time. I think that a majority of what coaching does, and at least to me, with all the years that I've been in this continues to be something that continues to be an extraordinary challenge is the quality of the relationship. Something that I have noticed in my work is that for many people, the intimacy that is created in a coaching relationship is sometimes the first time they have a relation that intimate in their whole lives, because it's a space of complete freedom, of complete of being able to talk. It's not that we're not going to judge, but our judgments are going to be judgments of possibility. Listening empathically, listening in an open manner. I think that this type of relationship, this type of space can be key so that answers can arise. Because sometimes this relationship space becomes or is bigger than having the right question to ask. Because, okay, one thing is, don't rush yourself in asking those questions. In my opinion, the silence can also be revealing. And if you take your time to ask your question, to really feel what you want to ask, you are creating the possibility so that the other person can also take time in answering the question, because it's an answer that if it doesn't surface quick enough, it means this person is thinking about stuff that they haven't thought about in quite a while, or maybe never. When the answer comes quickly, it's an answer that's in the box, in the usual, in what this person already knows. They feel like they're in an exam and they're just answering. When you create the right space and you ask the question that perhaps has never been asked so far, a question that allows the client to look at themselves, a question, something that questions their way of observing. One of the great characteristics of coaching is that it allows us to see that we don't have or a single way to see things. We have multiple, and we can invent many more. The story is basically what type of observant do we need to be in order to create the reality that we're willing to create or that we want to create? So I would say take that path, and you'll see that very frequently when asking questions towards the future, they can also find an important foundation that will open up the doorway to a different way of being, a different way of conversing. Because when you start seeing from elsewhere, you start seeing things from different emotions. Your body is learning, and you can decide your actions based on that. Again, to me, relationships are a subject that has fascinated me for years, and for many, many years, I keep even asking myself, what is love? Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Elena. Y
Thank
¿quién
you,
tengo una
Elena.
pregunta
I
demasiado
actually
personal?
have a very, very
Pero
personal
como todos
question for
estamos
you.
pasando por esta
But
experiencia del
since we're
coaching,
all going through the
¿cuál fue el
same
momento
experience
en que
of
tú te
coaching,
diste cuenta
I'm
que
wondering
empezaste a
when was the
procrastinar
time when you realized that
porque
you
no te
started
sentías lo
procrastinating because you
suficientemente como
didn't
ese ser que has sido ahora?
feel like you are the or you were the being that you are now? Okay, I'm gonna talk about some about my parts of my consciousness. One of my procrastinations for a while was avoiding difficult conversations. And I realized that very deeply there was a need to be liked. And fundamentally, the need to be liked was based on the necessity of feeling endearment. And I'm going to join this with something, I guess, stronger in terms of confession, Marcela. Many, many years ago, I joined Fernando Flores in a conference. I was going to introduce him, and Fernando crosses the room. There was many people. He reaches the front, and when it's my turn, I was going to introduce him. Along when I was walking, there's a lot of people sitting down, and they started, just they knew me, so they were like, "Hello, Elena," and I was shaking hands. So when I reached the front, it's 3 minutes after he did. He gave his conference, and at the end, I said goodbye because he was gonna have dinner with somebody else, and I said, "Well, okay, well, I am done. I gotta go." And he was like, "No, Elena, I want us to talk tomorrow morning. I want to invite you to hold a discussion tomorrow." Surely, Fernando. And he says, "Do you mind if I coach you?" And I said, "Sure." And he says, "You know that I really, really like you." And I know Fernando. And then he says, "But this is gonna hurt." I told him that's fine, but it's gonna hurt because I really, really like you. He said that 30 times. Next morning, it's 7 a.m. I'm having breakfast with him. And he said, "Yesterday, I realized something, and I want to share this with you. And I'm wondering if this is going to be helpful." And he said, "Elena, how are you going to reach wherever you want to reach if your interest lies in being liked by everyone? Those who see things that the rest don't need a space and need to be able to make a choice on where they're going to invest their time. If you want to reach wherever you want to reach, you have to pick or select being liked by those who are going to help you get there, because not everyone is going to help you get there. So make a choice. It was one of the strongest lessons of my life, Marcela. And he said, when this changes, even your private life is going to change. And that's how it was. But you really have to be brave enough. And be brave enough. And what we were talking about, an identity breaks. How am I going to walk through without shaking hands with everyone and kissing everyone's cheek, your identity changes.
Gracias, Elena.
Thank you so much, Elena. What an answer.
Y tan sincera. Muchas gracias de
So
parte tuya.
profound, so
CJ
sincere.
tiene levantada la mano porque
CJ
también nos
is
quiere
raising his
decir
hand
algo.
because he wants to also share a thought.
CJ.
CJ?
我们在聊天盒里面有有外
So
国人用西班牙语啊，就问一下教练的
someone
对
asked
应的
in the
心
chat
态
box
将
how
怎么样去了
in
解
Spanish
互
someone
动，
asked
就是客户
how
这边的一些隐形的一些
how
框架，
the
甚至一些
peaceful
庇护
mind
的一
of
些
the
心态。
coaches can
那
actually
我在
help
就是
break
当学习
the
教练的过程当
client's
中，我们也
protective
我本人也
shield.
就是触及到，因为为了找人来练
So
习演练
some
教练的过
when
程
I
当
when
中，
I try to
有
find
些
people
同仁就
to
给我一些
practice
非常
coaching,
复杂的
so
情
some
感，为
peer
了让我
actually
去
gave me
练习我
some
们这个教练技巧，
complicated
当时我才刚
emotional
刚学
issues
习教练。
when I
但我
just
其中
started
的一个感悟
learning
就是，
coaching. And then one of
作
my
为教练，我
realization
们
was
是
as
需要有一
coaches,
个能够体恤
we
对方
need
的
to have
心态，
have a
能够
considerate
说慈悲
mindset
为怀，能
to
够是
have
真
this
的感受到对
compassion
方的
to
不管是
feel
痛苦啊，他
to
的情
feel
感啊，
for
甚至一些
others'
各个方面的
emotions, feelings,
不
or
顺畅的一
sufferings,
些
anything
心
that
态。
they feel
但
stuck.
同时，我
But
们
at the
不
same
能
time,
够被
we
对方的
cannot
感情情感
get
给
it,
就是拖下去，
we
否
cannot
则的话，你也
let
跟着
ourselves
陷
get
在里
carried
面，
away
也
by their
很难去
emotions
客观的
because then
去
we couldn't
做好你
be
的教练的工
objective
作。所
and
以这
serve
个
as a
保
coach.
持心态
So
的
how we
平静
can
非常重
maintain
要。
this
但同时
peaceful
呢，另外两个方面，一
mindset,
个就是
it's
你是
very
否能够
key.
具备同理心，一
But
种慈
also
悲为
like
怀
whether
的
we have
感觉这个
compassion
态度。
and
另
this
外一方
this
面呢，你是
attitude
否
is
有
also
足够
important.
的
And
好
then on
奇
the other
心，
hand,
能够
whether we
去
have
真正去
enough
了解对
curiosity
方，而
to
不是一
understand,
开
to
始就
try to
做你的批
understand
判，
the
更
other
不能
people
够
without
陷
making
入到
any
你的这
judgment
些对方的这些情感世界里面。
or like fall into other people's emotional roller coaster.
Muchísimas gracias, CJ.
Thank you so much, CJ.
Sara,
Sarah,
Thank you.
¿tienes alguna pregunta para
do you have
ellos?
any questions for any of them?
There's actually one, I'm not sure, Ricardo. I think is that the one CJ you answered? Marcela, it's in the chat, it's in Spanish.
I answered Fanny.
Ah,
Yeah, I answered
espérate,
Fanny.
Yes.
voy
我
a
回答的是
Marcela,
Fanny 的。
could you see what? Yeah.
Bueno, acá hay una de Fanny Escalante que dice, ¿cómo
We have a question from
contribuye
Fanny
la base
Escalante.
interior del
How
coach
does
para llegar
the
a la
coach's
profundidad de las
internal
estructuras
peace help
invisibles
to
del
reach
coaching?
these invisible
Si
structures that you
quieres,
were talking
Elena,
about,
contestarle.
Elena?
Gracias por la pregunta.
Thank you for the question. Really good
Yo te
question.
diría
I
que
would
el
say
coaching
that
tiene una maldición.
coaching has a
Y siempre se los
curse.
digo a los alumnos
And I always
cuando
say
empiezan a
this to
estudiar.
students when they start.
El coaching es un proceso de conciencia.
Coaching is a process of
Y el
consciousness.
tamaño de tu conciencia, el
And
tamaño de
the
tu
size
mirada,
of your consciousness, like
es todo lo que tienes
how
para ofrecer
wide
a tu
your
cliente.
gaze is all you have to offer
Por lo cual,
to your client.
cuando tú no eres
So
capaz
when you're not
de
capable
desafiar a tu cliente, cuando el
of
tamaño de tu mirada
challenging
no es
your
parecido
client
a la
when the
del
size of your
profesional,
gaze is not
no es
wide enough
parecido
or
o
deep enough
mayor
as
que
your
el de tu
client's is,
cliente,
or if it's not similar
por
or
eso tienes
even
que
bigger or
hacer bien las
deeper,
preguntas.
then your questions are going to be
Por
too
lo cual,
small,
la paz es una situación
for
elegida.
which
No hay que hacer demasiadas
peace is
cosas,
the
simplemente
situation that you
hay que poder decir
select.
acepto lo que
You
es,
don't have to do much. You just have to
pero
say, I
comprender
accept
qué
things
es,
as they are.
en
But
general no es una sola
understanding
cosa. Comprender la
what that
complejidad,
is typically not just one thing. Understanding
y
how
eso es
complex that
maravilloso. Y es un
is
trabajo de
something
toda la vida.
wonderful, and
No se
it's
acaba
a
nunca.
lifelong task. It never ends. Never.
Te
dedicating ourselves to broadening that gaze is our job, our coaches, because all we have as a working tool is that whiteness and how deep that gaze is.
Muchas gracias, Elena.
Thank you so much, Elena.
Aprovechando este espacio,
Now,
yo te diría, ¿qué
to make the best of
consejos
this
les
space, I would
das
like to
a
also ask,
los coaches que
what
están
advice
empezando su
could you
vida
give
de
to
coaching
coaches who are
para que
just
realmente
starting
sean
their
personas
lives in the world of coaching,
suficientemente
so that they are people that are
profesionales,
sufficiently
pero también
professional,
que se sientan
but at
que
the
la
same time that they
vulnerabilidad es parte
feel
de todo
that
este proceso
vulnerability
y haya una
is
transformación.
part of this process and for a true transformation to
Yo
take
te
place.
diría que
I
primero
would
no me gustan los
say
consejos, no
that,
sirven,
first of
pero
all,
voy a
I don't
darte
like giving
mi
advice.
manera de
I don't think
mirar
that is something
y si a
that
alguien le
works.
sirve,
I'm going to give you my
porque
perspective,
rodéate de muy
and
buenos maestros.
you'll see if this works for you. One,
Eh,
surround yourself
dos,
with good
no pares
masters.
nunca,
Second, never stop.
nunca pares de aprender.
Never stop learning,
Cada vez que aprendes, amplías la
because
mirada.
every time you learn, that gaze becomes
Entonces,
wider.
si bien cualquiera puede ser un
So
gran
if
maestro,
truth be
busca
told,
buenos
anyone
maestros.
can be a
Esos
teacher.
que te
Find good
desafían, esos
teachers.
que
Find
hasta
those
si te
teachers that
duela el
challenge
empujón te
you,
dan.
and that those teachers that when they shove you forward, it
Porque ahí
almost
es donde está la
hurts a little,
posibilidad de
because
ampliar.
that's where the
Una de las
possibility lies to
situaciones que
broadening
más
that
me preocupan
gaze.
en el
One of
coaching
the
es que cada
situations that I
vez
find most
se está
concerning
poniendo
in
más
coaching is that more and
acento
more
en la técnica.
there's more accent
Yo creo que la
on the
técnica es
technique.
fundamental. No quiero
And
sonar
I
mucho,
believe that technique is something
pero no
fundamental,
hacemos
absolutely.
demasiado
I don't
por
want
la
this to be
técnica.
misinterpreted. But we can't do much with just
El
technique
coaching es un
alone.
acto profundamente humano de
Coaching
relación.
is a very profound
Y tiene
human
muchísimo
act
que
of
ver
relationship,
con
and
el
it is
tamaño
very much
de
related
conciencia y de
to
relación
the
que tenemos
size of
con nosotros
consciousness and the
mismos.
size of the
Autoconciencia,
relationships that we
y
have
al
with
decir
ourselves, our
autoconciencia es
self-consciousness.
cómo nosotros
And,
nos
and when I
relacionamos
say
con el mundo.
self-consciousness, that means how do we relate ourselves with the world out there?
Muchas gracias, Elena. Y
Thank you so
antes
much,
de
Elena.
cerrar,
And before
Yeah.
wrapping up,
tenemos a CG que
we
tiene
have
levantada la mano.
CJ
Just
who
sorry,
is raising
just
his
one
hand.
more. Yeah, just one more
Did
thing. CJ, hang on. Yeah, I just want to let everyone know that we have a feedback form, and we appreciate if you could just fill it up. It's in the chat, and it's also because of time constraint. We will let CJ wrap up after this, what he wants to say, and then after that, I will invite everyone to turn on their cameras to take a group photo. Yeah. So let me just get CJ. You can say something.
好，我就针对我们马塞
Oh,
拉问的这个提问
I
新
will
教练有
reply.
什么建议？那
So,
作
what
为
kind of
IAC 的会
suggestion
员的
for
组
new
的
coaches
组长，
as
我能够
the
给的
leader
最
of
好的
the
建议就是
membership
加入
committee?
IAC，
The
加
best
入我们的
advice
活
I
动，
could
加入
give,
我
just
们
join
像今天晚上我
IAC,
们这
join
Learning
our
Circle 的活
events,
动，像
join
我
our
们
learning
的
circles,
3人行的教
or
练
our
练习。
triads like for
当
coaching.
然，如果我们能够
And
去
if
请
we
教
could
好的老师，那肯定
consult
是对
good
我们的
teachers,
教练很有
of
帮助
course,
的。
that would
其
really
他的时候，
be
我们
helpful
也可
for
以
new
跟我们
coaches.
的
But
前辈们、
at other
我们
times,
的
we could
同行
also
者们
consult
来
our
参加我
peers
们 IAC 的各个
and
方面的
invite
交流活动，并
all
且得
people
到
to
我们无
join
论是
these
前辈
different
还是
kind
同
of
行者的
events, because then
真
we
实
could
的
get
反馈。 我们这一
feedback
次的
from
3人行
masters,
教练
from
就有好
peers,
几
from
位参加
just
本
people
活
from
动的
different
会员
fields.
们
Yeah,
拿
so
到了
this
我们这
time
个
actually
CC 的认证。 所
for
以
for
如果
actually
是要
people
提
who
升
joined the
我们的，
coaching
如果是
trials,
想提升
actually
我们的
someone just got
教
the
练技能，
CC
无论你是
certification.
属于哪个协
So
会，
if
都
you,
欢迎
it doesn't
参加
matter which
IAC 入我
association
们
you
会员或
belong
直
to,
接参加我
you
们的
just
活
you
动。
can join our events or become our members and join our any of our activities.
Thank you, CJ. Thank you. So now, please, everyone, turn on your cameras so that Charlie can take the photographs for us. And smile.
Ya, Charlie, ¿ya la tomaste? ¿Sí? Muchas gracias
To
gracias
take the picture,
a
Charlie?
todas las
Yes.
personas que nos
Thank you then.
Right.
acompañaron en el
Thank
día
you,
de
Thank
hoy.
you.
everyone. Thank you, all of you who've
Muchas
joined us
gracias.
this morning, this
Muchas
afternoon.
gracias,
Thank you
Elena.
so
Muchas
much.
gracias,
Thank you,
Sigrid.
Elena.
Muchas
Thank you,
gracias a
CJ.
todos.
And thank you,
Nos
everyone,
vemos
for being
pronto.
here.
Gracias.
Yes,
See
thank
you
you,
all very
everyone.
soon.
Chao.
Yes, and please do join us for our next learning circle in August. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you. Bye-bye.
The International Association of Coaching. Home of the Coaching Masteries.